We are ready to go. We're going to open it. We're doing Shulchan Aruch now. Choshen Mishpat, the regular Shulchan Aruch, not the tour. We finished the tour, and now we're going to see Shulchan Aruch. Siman Shun Samach Gimel Siv Vav. Shun Samach Gimel Siv Vav. We saw the Rambam already, and we saw the tour. Okay, is everybody hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and I hear you now. Okay, good. Fine. All right. Josh, you're traveling? I don't see you, Josh. Usually I see you. Josh, you there? No. Okay, maybe he's.
However, I'm here. I am double parked in Brooklyn, so I'm going to do audio only.
Okay. We won't tell the police. Okay. The Seder Gam. Okay. So, Sivov. Hadar v'chotzer chaveiro. Shalomi daito. Everybody with me? Shin Samach Gimel Vav. Hadar v'chotzer chaveiro shalomi daito. Sha'omar lo tzei. The guy, Reuven's in Shimon's house, Shalomi daito, and Shimon walks in and finds him there and says, "Please leave." V'lo yotza, and he doesn't leave. Chayv litin lo kol scharo. Even if it's a lo ovid lemegar. Okay, that once you tell the guy leave and he stays, there's no such thing as dar b'chotzer chaver shalomi daito. V'im lo amar lo tzei. Here's a chiddush. He saw him there and he didn't say anything. So is that called shalomi daito? I mean, l'chari, he knows about it. Okay, im osa chotzer eino asuya lischar, eino tzorach la'alot lo schar. Even though he quote knows, but since he didn't protest, so that's like hadar b'chotzer chaver shalomi daito, and he doesn't have to pay. Afal pi shehotzi et habaal habayit baal korcho min habayit v'hu darbo. Wow, what happens if Reuven locks Shimon out of his house, and Reuven lives in the house? Ve'afilo hoyarogil lahaskiro rak achshav lo ovid lemegar basar hai shaita azlinan. And if it's a lo ovid lemegar and Reuven lives there, as long as Shimon doesn't tell him go out, Reuven doesn't have to pay rent. Afal pi shederech ze hadar liskor makom la'atzmo. Again, we're turning Reuven into an Ovid la'oger. He usually rents, and therefore he is a nehene. But since Shimon normally doesn't rent out his house, Shimon is a lo chaser. Sheze nene v'ze eino chaser. V'dafka shekvar darbo. All of this is post facto. Avalo yuchal l'chufo l'karchila sheyanichenu ladurbo. But of course, Reuven, even though Shimon is a low chaser and Reuven is a nene, and therefore that opens the door for Kofen al Midas Sodom. Afal pisha Kofen al Midas Sodom, the Mokom shezen nene v'zeino chaser. So you could open the door to talk about Reuven, saying to Shimon, "Look, it doesn't cost you anything, so you don't be a Midas Domnik." So hani mili bedavar dei boi lehenos lo yuchal lehenos. That we only say kofen al midas dom. This is going to come up when we get to the Bava Metzia also. We only say kofen al midas dom when Reuven is going to benefit, Shimon is not going to lose, but Shimon has no way to benefit anyway. Shimon couldn't benefit. Aval b'hai gavna. Even though Shimon normally doesn't rent it, so he's a lo chaser. Iboi bal hachatzer lehenos v'laharviach lahaskir chatzero hayayochol elasheno rotze. So in that case, in kofin oso laasot v'chinam, he certainly can't force Shimon to let him do it for free, even though he doesn't normally rent it, and he wouldn't rent it. But since he could rent it, that already immunizes him from Kofen al Midas Dom. All right, so we realize that this Kofen al Midas Dom is a very, very touchy, delicate thing, and we're going to see another refinement of it when we do the Gemara in Bava Metzia. Okay, next. The question still here on this? I think it's pretty clear. V'ima chatzer osui liskor, afal pishein derech zel liskor. So Shimon normally rents, and Reuven normally doesn't rent. This is the unstated case that we had the big machlokas rishonim, right? Where Reuven is a lo nene, but Shimon is a chaser indirectly. tzorich lalot lo schar. Sharei chosro momo. Miu im lo hoya darbo ela shegozlo mimenu. Potter l'shalem haschirus. Oh, ironically, if Reuven doesn't live in the house, he just locks Shimon out of the house. He steals the house, but he doesn't live there. So then they really all we have is groma, and he doesn't have to pay rent. Okay, but here's the Mordechai halacha lemaisa. The stam batim bizman hazeh kaimeli agra. The afagav dadayin lo hiskiro me olam. It has a din of kaimela agra, and therefore all of this idea of zen nene v'zelo chaser is we're always starting with a theory of the house is rentable, and therefore he's allowed to. If you hold ze lo nene v'ze chaser pays rent, then he's going to have to pay rent. If you hold ze lo nene v'ze chaser, so then he won't have to pay rent, even though we're going to keep the house. We're going to consider a house like a kaimela agra. All right, is that clear? Again, that's basically the Mordechai. So if you hold ze lo nene v'ze chaser pays rent, which is a machlokas, because Tosfos holds not like that. But if you hold ze lo nene v'ze chaser pays rent, every house today you're going to have to pay rent. Meaning, if I sneak into your house and I pitch my tent in your backyard, you never rent your house, but I'm going to have to pay rent. Okay, because nowadays everything's considered a kaimel agra.
So in halacha, there's no such thing as squatters' rights.
According to the Mordechai, nowadays there's no such thing as squatters' rights. Okay, yes, that's correct. Okay, and certainly there's no kofin al midas no. Okay, all right. Next, Zai. You know what? Let's see. You know what? Maybe what it's kedai first to see. Where am I here? Here was my notes. It's probably kedai first to see the sma. Okay, let's see the sma yud zayin. Okay, wait, am I right? No, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, okay, no, the sma's coming up in the next, sma's coming up. No, it is, yeah, right, Sharei Chas Molom. Right, so let's remind ourselves, before we get to the sma, let's remind ourselves what the sma is going on. So the sma is going on the line that says, V'im hachatzer asui liskor. Afal pishein derech zel liskor tzorech la'alot lo schar, sharei chosro momo. Okay, now what's the chosro momo? It's indirect. And why isn't it a grama? So says the sma, Yud Zayin. Sharei chosro momon ve'ein ze mechashev grama b'nezikin. Kivan dezed darbo v'ochal es kaspo. Remember, this was how the Rosh argued on Tosfos and held the Rif argued on Tosfos and holds that even though the nezik is a grama, and normally we hold grama b'nezik and potter, that's when there's a mazik who has no benefit whatsoever. It has nothing of the nizaks with him. But here, even though it's a grama of the nezikin, but since the way that grama happened was the mazik, i.e. the renter, he was in there. He's holding that benefit that he caused the owner to lose. So therefore, we're going to make him pay. It's not a standard case of grama. That's how the Rif is going to understand that, in contradistinction to Tosfos. Okay, and that's the Yesh Omrim. All right, and that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Again, let's see it inside. Sharei chosro momon ve'ein ze mechashev grama b'nezikin. Why? Kiven dezed darbo v'ochal es kaspo. Ve'afagav delo nenebo mikol makom ochlo ma she'en ke begezel mechavero v'lo darbo delo ochlo v'lo nene mimenu. Kiven delo darbo dezed mechashev grama upater. U'kamoshe kosav maram miyad acher. Okay, miu im lo yadarbo. This was the Rambam. These were the other Rishonim who all argue on Tosfos. Okay. So that was Sivav. Now we go to see if, just a minute, there's a Piskei Tshuva. The Piskei Tshuva. Okay, everybody see a Piskei Tshuva there? Little letters. Everybody, okay, yeah, so there's an important Piskei Tshuva here. Do you guys see the Piskei Tshuva? It's little letters. It is right below the main text on the left side. It's Od Gimel. So let's remind ourselves what we just said here that is going to precipitate what the Piskei Tshuva is about to say. So why aren't we kofin al midas dom? This is going to be the issue. Why are we kofin al midas dom? Remember, the Shulchan Aruch did not give the reason that it deprives the owner of his ownership. If we can make you let me live in your house without paying because you normally don't rent your house, and we can force you, it's a deprivation of ownership. There are some Rishonim that want to learn like that. Okay, but that's not what it said in the Shulchan Aruch. That's not what some of the Rishonim said. They said that iboy lehenos mimena. Since if he wanted to benefit, he could have benefited. That insulates him from kofin al midas dom. Says the Piskei Tshuva, very important Piskei Tshuva. Mashma shedavar she'eno yochel laharviach ba. If the owner has no way of making money, so he's really a low chaser completely, yochel lachufo. In other words, if you understand that the reason is because you can't force the guy since he could have rented it, if there was no way in the world that he could have made any money off of it, and I can benefit, it sounds like kofin al midas dom. We're going to force you to let me use it. Okay? Right? Chanina Bezin shekosav demishum de poshet shezer rak leharamba. Avaladat harosh, right? The gam ketshuvos beis Ephraim, right, etc. Al harama, where it basically what it means is that we don't agree with that, because at the end of the day, even if you could not rent it and make money, at the end of the day, if I force you to let me use it, it's a deprivation of your rights. Okay, and therefore halacha lamaisa, we don't activate kofin al midas dom in such a case where it's going to infringe on your ownership rights. Okay, but we'll have to see when. So when do we ever kofin al midas dom? We're going to see. We'll see. Not until when we get to above and see it. Okay, let's do.
So what does that mean to deprive someone of ownership rights?
If we can force you to let me use your thing, what we've done is we've compromised your ownership.
But that's not chaser.
Correct. You're not.
It's something else. No. I'm saying it's not an issue of being the chaser, the owner. It's something else.
No, wait. The default is kofin al midas dom zen nene v'zel lo chaser. Okay.
Right.
But if it means using your thing, okay, using your thing, well, that means I have just overridden your ownership rights. And even though you're low chaser, we can't force you to let go. We saw that. That was the two explanations of why we don't apply zen and v'zel chaser here. That was one of the explanations. But that's going to be very important, because we're going to find certain times where we will be kofin al midas dom if it's not a question of ownership rights. Okay, you're following? Okay. Now this is halacha zayin. Siv zayin. Yesh omrim kishe'en hachatzer omed lischar. Di amrina de'enot tzarich la'alot lo schar. Im chosro afilu davar muat, kigon shahaya habayit chadash v'zeh chosro b'mesh hishchiro, afal pi she'en hefsed oso shachuris ele me'at, al yodo megalgalin olav es kol aschar kefi ma sheneneh. That was the end of that was the last piece in the tour that we saw. We saw that from the guy who built the fourth wall, megalgalin olav es hakol. Okay, and he's going to have to pay everything, because the minute there's a little bit of a loss, you're out of the realm of zen and v'zel chaser. Again, we're talking after the fact. All right, v'im kain im ein derech ze liskor patur dehalonene v'yesh cholki. All right, again, it's a machlokas whether we're talking here about a zen nene v'zel chaser in a chaser de lo kaima la'agra. It's got to be a chatzar de lo kaima la'agra. Whether a little bit of a hefsed, a little bit of a damage already makes you pay all of the rent, or just pay for the damage that you did. Right? You did $5 of damage and the rent's $100. One could say, well, I'll pay you the $5 and turn it into a zen and a v'zel chaser. And there is such a shita. Okay, but we're going to paskin not like that based on that Gemara. Yeah, okay. Let's see Yud Ches in the Sma. Yud Ches in the Sma. So let me just make sure this is what, yeah, okay. So Yud Ches in the Sma. Okay. Pirush Kivan Dal Kol Panim Tzorich L'Shale Masha Chosro. He's certainly going to have to pay the damage. In other words, if there's $5 of damage, right? He was Zen Nenev Zelo Chaser. I normally rent for $100, and I cost you $5 of damage when you normally don't rent. I certainly have to pay the $5. That's pashut. So once I have to pay the $5, Kivan Shal Kol Panim Tzorich L'Shale Masha Chosro Megalgalin Gamkein Al Yedei Oso Hamaat. Kol mashenene v'tzarich l'shalem hakol. Okay. All right. Okay.
So what was the theory behind that, where we shift, so to speak, from Nezikin to rent?
Good question. The answer is that we're not making you pay nezek. What we did is we just turned it. We just made it. We took it out of the category of Zen and of Zelo Chaser.
All right, so since he's no longer a lo chaser, then you're back to the sort of like the original relationship.
And we look at your hana. Did you have hana? You absolutely had hana. You had hana. And remember, the Gemara entertained the possibility that Zen and of Zelo Chaser, there was a machlokas in the Gemara. It was back and forth in the Gemara because he was nene, he was lo chaser. Okay, so we say after the fact, midas dom. You don't have to pay. But the minute there's a cheser, you're out of the realm of zen nene v'zelo chaser. Once you're out of the realm of zen nene, the only reason the guy who was nene is off the hook because there was a lo chaser. But he was a nene. In other words, we're starting with the fact, hey, Reuven, you just saved $100. Oh, right. But I didn't cost Shimon anything. So that's a zen nene v'zelo chaser, and on that there was a machlokas in the Gemara. If you remember, there was a machlokas in the Gemara. So the conclusion in the Gemara was that Zen and Vizelo Chaser is potter. But the minute there's a Cheser, we're not in the reward of Zen and Vizelo Chaser anymore. And therefore we look at your Hana. We look at your Hana. Okay, that's the Chiddush here. That's the point. Okay. Now. But Ches. Yesh omrim dehade amrin dikasha chatzar eino omed lischar eino tzarich la'alot lo schar, meaning we're in a pure case. Zen nene, Reuven saved $100 of rent, and Shimon was lo chaser, and Reuven moved in, and he saved $100, and Shimon was not chaser, and we say Zen nene v'zelo chaser potter, he doesn't have to pay. But there's one caveat. There are those who hold that's dafka shelo gila hadar bedaito shayeritzono liten lo scharim lo yarichenu ladur bo bechina. That's only if we have no indication that Reuven was ready to pay. Reuven moved in, he saved $100. He didn't cost Shimon anything, so he was taking advantage of a freebie. But if there's any indication that Reuven would have done it, even if it's not a freebie, aval im gila bedaito kain sarach liten lo schar. So in other words, if Reuven indicated, I'm doing it because it's free, but you know what? If it's not free, I'm going to pay. Obviously, what he's doing is he's saving $100, but right, he's only doing it because it's free. The minute he said, you know what, I would have paid the $100 if I would have had to pay. And where did that come from? That came from the Megalgal and Alavis Hakol, because the guy the Nikaf who built the fourth wall indicated that he's ready to pay. He spent money to protect himself. So he indicated he's ready to pay money, and therefore Megalgal and Alavis Hakol, and therefore Reuven would have to pay rent if he indicated that I would have paid if I wouldn't have gotten it for free. And we're always assuming that he did it because it's free, and therefore he doesn't have to pay. But if he indicated that he would have paid, then he's going to have to pay rent. And that is in the Sma. That is in the Sma Chaf. In the Sma Chaf. Aval in gila bedaito kain betur kosav zal. Aval in gila daito shahaya no se lo schar kodem sheyotza mimenu. Right? Ubefrishas katavti de kavarosot kemoshe kosav kan v'shulchan aruch v'tevas kodem eno medukta kulehai. In other words, it's even, he moved in. He moved in because it was free. But during the time that he's there, he indicated, you know what, if I would have had to pay, I would have paid also. So then he's going to have to pay. Okay, as opposed to after he moved out, then it's too late. Okay, one more. Yud Aleph. Right, Yud Aleph. Hade Amrinan. Oh, yeah, okay, this was the complicated case. But that's really where it came from. It really came from the idea of Reuven and Shimon, Reuven renting Shimon's house, Reuven renting Levi's house to Shimon. Yesh Omri, the Hade Amrinan de B'chatzah she'eno omid lischar, eno tzarich la'alot lo schar, afilu im sochro me'acher. Again, remember the case. Reuven comes to Shimon and says, I got a great house for you. Shimon says, great, I'll take it. How much is the rent? $100. Wonderful. And Shimon moves in. And it turns out that it's Levi's house. So it says that if he doesn't have to pay Reuven, and if he paid Reuven, he gets his money back. And he doesn't have to pay Shimon if he hasn't paid Shimon yet. Because vis-a-vis Shimon, he was a dar b'chatzar chaver, shalom idaito. Even though he indicated that he was ready to pay rent. And in fact, he might have even already paid rent to Reuven. But Levi's out of the picture. Because Shimon was dar b'chatzar Levi, shalom idaito. Ein tzarich litein lo schar, af al pi shenichnas al dat litein lo schar. He moved in because Reuven said, I'm going to rent it to you for $100. And Shimon said, yes, I'll take it. And he moved into the house thinking he's going to pay $100 to Reuven. And therefore, vis-a-vis Levi, he's a dar shalom idaito. He's a dar b'chatzar shalom idaito. V'afilu im notno lizeh shesachro mimenu. He already paid Reuven the money. Sorach lachzer bo. Reuven has to give him back the money. V'nosan lo haschar kiven shehu boru shebetos yohiv le chayiv lahachziro. Meaning, he gave Reuven by mistake. So therefore, Reuven certainly has to give back the rent. Okay, let's just see now the Sma. Chaf Aleph. Sheyasover shu shalo. B'nemuki Yosef Kosov. Dezeh shehiskir lo. Savur shuhu shalo. V'hu gavra da'ovid lahaskir bati shalo. Meaning, it's interesting that I don't know if we saw this in the Mukhe Yosef. Just remind ourselves. Who's Reuven? Reuven is an agent, and Reuven has Reuven runs an Airbnb. Okay, and he rented Shimon a house that Reuven thought was his, but it ended up was Levi's. Mishum hachi skiro bedamim bisavro shehu shalo. He wasn't a crook. He made a mistake. V'nira dechein perush divrei hatur v'hamachaber. And then afilu im nosno lazas paro hanuk Yosef hatam dechichechi degabe maskir mekartosu. At the end of the day, vis-a-vis Reuven, Shimon made a mekartos because he gave him money by mistake. Reuven had no right to rent it. Sharon is barer sheino shalo legabe socher nami mekartosu. So Shimon made a mistake too. Reuven made a mistake in renting it. Shimon made a mistake in paying the money. So, right? Mekartosu kiven de agar miman de lesle schus bigave lo mishtabed mikoach haischirus lechad minayu. So the fact that Shimon committed to pay rent to Reuven, that was a mistake. And therefore the commitment to Reuven, to pay Reuven rent by mistake, has no bearing on his commitment to Levi, where he never made any commitment. Let's go back. Mekachosu kiva de agar miman de let le schut begave lo mishtabed mikoach haistirus lechabinayu ukeman de lo agar le dami. There's no rent here whatsoever. So basically, we have Shimon living in Levi's house for free, and it's all right. Reuven has to give back the rent that he got. Because when Shimon was saying, "Oh, it's okay, it's okay that I gave him the rent," but of course it was a mistake. What about the argument? Wait a minute. So now we know that Shimon was megaladas, that he's ready to rent. here we're going back to the previous simon. We have a situation where Shimon was megala das that he's ready to rent. So why don't we apply the din that when Shimon lives in Levi's house, zenen v'zelo chaser, but when we said that if the renter indicated that if he can't get it for free, he'll pay, why don't we apply that din here? And say the fact that he paid money to Reuven or agreed to rent from Reuven is a gilui das that he wouldn't do it for free. Why not? Why don't we say that? You guys see the problem here. I'm sorry, I've skipped the line. Okay. The umehai time and nami lo armrin bezed diahane gilui daito shenotan schirus kine armrin besif shekodim lo. Why don't we apply the previous siyaf that Shimon was megala das and he's ready to pay rent? The shiny hacha da have schirus betos ubitela meikara. That gilui das was a mistake. It was a mistake. It was gilui das by mistake. Ironically, it's amazing. Okay. V'ayin prisha mashakosov tur de lo mahani hagilui das ela b'keshagila daito litein schirus lizeshehu balabayit. Gilui das is only when you were megala das, you're ready to pay rent to the owner. V'lo keshagila daito litno la'acher. That's not called gilui das. Now, a second, let's have Gimel. I think we have to go back in for a minute because there's another amazing halacha here. Okay, I don't. Didn't we talk about whether? Let's read Yud. Let's read Yud. Okay. Yud. Yesh omrim. Remember, we paskin not like Tosas. We paskin like the Rif. That when you are a lo ovid lemega, you don't rent, but you moved into a place that is rentable, you have to pay schar. Right? That was the Nemuke Yosef against the Rif against Tosas. Afilu sachro mi Ruven v'nosan lo aschar v'nimse she'enu shelo ela shel Shimon tzarich litein l'Shimon scharo. All right, here his Shimon is our Levi. Again, zesh amarnu b'chatzar asui lischar ain't chayiv la'alot lo schar. Afilu sachro meiruven v'nosan lo haschar v'nimtzei she'eno shelo. Meaning, I have an Airbnb. Let's get the case straight. So, Levi again. Shimon here is our Levi. So Levi has an Airbnb. Larry has an Airbnb, and that is obviously a rentable property. And Reuven comes along and tells Shimon, I've got a great property for you. Okay? And he shows him Levi's Airbnb, and Reuven collects the rent. So now we're in a situation of Shimon lived in Levi's house, Shalomi Daito, but the house is an Ovid Lemegar. It's a rentable house. And we're poskening like the Nemuke, like the Rif, that when Reuven is lo nene, but the owner is chaser, you have to pay. So look what happened here. So Levi had an Airbnb. Reuven lived there without Levi knowing, so he has to pay. But what happened if Shimon, who's the renter, he paid Reuven because he thought Reuven is the owner. Okay, and then he lived in the house. He lived in the Airbnb. And then Levi comes along and says, what are you doing in my Airbnb? He says, what do you mean? I rented it. I rented it from Reuven, and I even paid him rent. And Levi says, very sorry, it's not Reuven's. So Levi can collect rent from Shimon. Wait a minute, but Shimon already paid rent to Reuven. So the default could have been that Shimon could say, look, I paid rent to Reuven, you go run after Reuven and get the money back. And the Chiddush is no. That Shimon has to pay Levi the rent because it was an Ovid Lemegar, and it was right, and then he's got to run after Reuven and get his money back. That's what we're saying now. Okay, Yesh Omri. I'm in Yud. Zesh Amarnu b'chatzar asur lischar chayv la'alot lo schar afilu sachro meReuven v'nosa lo haschar v'nimtzei she'eno shelo elo shel Shimon. Again, The Shulchan Aruch Shimon is our Levi. Tzorech litein l'Shimon scharo. V'davka kishe Shimon o shluchov bekan v'ayu mishtadlin l'haschiro. It's got to be an Airbnb. Levi has to be trying to rent it for us to say this. Avalim eno be'ir ve'ein mi shemishtadel l'haschiro. Meaning, you have an Airbnb, but nobody's handling it right now, and therefore it's not really, nobody's trying to rent it. That's not called Ovid Lemegar. Okay? Right? And therefore it's a havi kechasher the low kaimela. I mean, it's a low kaimela. The af al pisha sachro me Ruvain ain't sarch liten l'shimon klum l'komoshin is buyer. In other words, we've got to know whether this is an active Airbnb or a passive Airbnb. If it's an active Airbnb, then Shimon's going to have to pay Levi even if he already paid Ruvain. But if it's not an active Airbnb, he doesn't have to pay Levi. He doesn't have to pay Levi because it's lo kaimela agra at that moment. And he gets his money back from Reuven. U'kamoshin is buyer. Okay. V'yachzor. I'm still continuing the Shulchan Aruch. V'yachzor v'yitba miruven mashenosan lo. Now here's a big chiddush. Okay. V'afilu socha miruven b'pachos mikidei domov. What happens if it's an active Airbnb? It's an active Airbnb, and Shimon normally rents it out for $200 a night. And Ruvain rented it to Shimon for $100 a night. So when Shimon went into that house, he thought he's paying $100 a night. And then Levi shows up and says, hey, it's mine. And Levi says, and I normally charge $200 a night. And Shimon says, wait a minute, I only went in there because Ruvain offered me a cheap price. He offered me $100 a night. That's why I went in. I never agreed to pay $200 a night. Says the Shulchan Aruch. V'afilu sochro mi Ruvain bepachos mikidei domov. So he rented it from Ruvain less than the market price. Tzorech litein l'Shimon kol haschar haroi litein lo. If the normal price is $200 and Shimon thought he's getting a good deal by renting it from Ruvain for $100, he's up the creek. He's got to pay $200 to Levi. Of course, he gets his $100 back from Ruvain, but there's no way he's going to avoid having to pay Levi $200 because it's a kaimela agra at $200. But now what about the opposite? Ruvain ripped Shimon off. Levi normally rents it for $100 a night. And Ruvain sees, I got a sucker here. And he says, hey, Shimon, I got a great deal for you, $200. And Shimon agrees to pay $200 to Ruvain, even though the going rate's $100. Im sachro mi Ruvain bedamim yikarim v'nimsa bayit shel Shimon. How much does he have to pay Shimon? Remember, he ultimately has to pay Shimon. He had already agreed to pay $200. He only has to pay lo yifralo ela kafi masha sachrim acherim. He only has to pay Shimon the market rate. The Levi the market rate, even though he had agreed to pay Ruvain more than the market rate. Right? Levi only is entitled to the normal rent. Meaning, what happens if somehow or other the money that Shimon paid to Ruvain ended up in Levi's hands? Okay, again, here's the case. Levi normally charges $100. And Ruvain took advantage of Shimon and charged $200. And Shimon paid Ruvain $200. Somehow or other, that $200 ended up by Levi, because Levi heard what happened. He goes pounding the door to Ruvain. I heard you took money from my house. If you don't give me over those $200, I'm going to send the mafia after you. And Ruvain handed over the $200 that he got from Shimon. Levi gets to keep it. Right? Shimon, again, remember, our Levi is the Shulchan Aruch Shimon. And of course, Levi has to tie. I never would have. The going rate is $100, but I would never have rented it for $100. I only would have rented it for $200. If he tines that, it's a suffix whether he's telling the truth or not. Okay, and therefore lo mafkinan mina, you can't take the money. Okay. All right. Let's see the sma on these. Everybody, these are all interesting cases, but you understand here the darba chatzah chavero, whether there's a nene of zelo chaser. So says the sma. Yeah, let's go to what letter? We did Chaf Aleph.
Did Chavez also?
Okay, so let's go to Chaf Gimel. Im nosan lo haschar, ritzono lomar. Af im nosan lo haschar, even if he already gave Reuven, since what he gave Reuven was meaningless, he gets his money back and he owes nothing to their Shimon, our lady. Okay. Shezeh Chav Dalid. What was the line of Chav Dalid? What's the Shezeh here? Shezeh Shamarnu v'chatzer asui lischar. Okay, Batur Kosa. Uv'chatzer dekaimela agra. So now we're back to our case. Levi rents his house. It's an Airbnb, an active Airbnb. And Reuven and Shimon normally rents. Shimon is a Gavrid of the Megar. Chayev litin lo schar. Meaning the fact that Reuven tricked Shimon into paying him the rent in no way affects Shimon's liability to Levi, since Levi normally rents an active Airbnb. And Shimon is a guy who normally rents. Shimon moved into Levi's house without the das of Levi, but it's an Airbnb, and Shimon normally pays rent. He's got to pay. Chayev litin lo schar, right? The Ayin Pirush de Prisha de Kasafti, Denire de O Ka'omar. Chol Chad Kefi Dino Mivar, meaning every case is according to the details. Avalim lo sachar kol. Okay, I'm sorry, that's already the next halach. Okay, the Seder. So I think we've got enough here for what we want. Halacha lamaisa. Again, we paskin adar b'chatzer chaver shalomi daito, as long as there was no cheser whatsoever. Ein tzarich lalot lo schar. Okay, as long as Reuven is a lonen, even if Shimon has an active Airbnb. But if Reuven indicated, I'm sorry, if okay, now let's go back to Dar B'Chatzer Chavera. So Reuven lives in Shimon's house, Shalom Idaito. If Reuven indicated that he's ready to pay Shimon rent, and he wouldn't have, and even though it was free, he's going to pay Reuven rent, he has to pay Reuven rent. But if we had that convoluted case where he never indicated to the owner that he would pay the owner rent, he only indicated to some shyster that he would pay rent, that doesn't have any impact on the owner, and he's still considered a zenen of his elo chaser. Okay, as long as he doesn't normally rent. Okay, we have 50 for Bava Mitzvah, unless there's any questions on this. We're going to.
Yeah. So can we just?
Yeah, go ahead. Question.
Can we just talk for a second? So Lamaisa, for a chutznik who wants to come into Israel and rent an Airbnb, like what if anything do you do to try to ensure that the person who is renting you this Airbnb is legit?
Great question.
Because sometimes you rent from the owner, other times it's an agent.
Correct. Absolutely.
So, or let's put it this way: sometimes the person who's renting it is purportedly the owner, but other times it's clearly an agent or somebody who is representing himself as an agent. I mean, it sounds like, according to what we're learning, if you give people the benefit of the doubt, you're leaving yourself open for fraud.
And were you ever taken in by a Ponzi scheme?
Ponzi? I don't think so, no.
But you know people are, because they didn't do due diligence. You got to do due diligence. You got to know that you're dealing with the owner or you're dealing with the real agent, right? Otherwise, I'm selling you the Brooklyn Bridge. Hey, I got a great bridge for you. Would you like to buy it?
Well, some things are obvious and other things maybe not so.
What you just said is that a person who doesn't do due diligence is vulnerable to being cheated.
Well, I guess the devil's in the details of how you do that.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, right. That's, I
mean, if you don't have somebody on the ground there in Israel, like.
Oh, we know. Oh, many cases, right? You do something on the internet. I mean, that's the biggest scams happen on the internet. Right? Right. I've got a house. Oh, you want to rent? That's fine. Send me a check send me a deposit for $50. There's a house on Rehov Beit HaKerem 13, and if you send me a deposit, you'll be able to come when you come to Israel. And you
right.
and you bank transfer the guy $50. You bank transfer the guy $100 deposit, and you show
right.
up, knock on the door, Beit HaKerem 13, and the guy looks at you like it fell off the moon. You don't think that's happened?
Okay, but all right. So, I mean, according to what you're saying, is that probably you really have to have somebody on the ground to check things out for you.
I mean, look, I'm getting emails all the time from my banks and all the things. How do you prevent internet scams? You're basically what you're talking about is how do you protect yourself against a scam when you want to rent an apartment in Jerusalem
Or a fraud.
or Baltimore, right? A guy's
Okay.
coming, right? He's coming to be with his in-laws for Pesach in Baltimore, and he needs a house, and he goes online to find a house near his in-laws. Okay, you're talking about protecting yourself from a scam. That's basically what you're talking.
Yeah.
But this Gemara shows you that you could be very vulnerable for a scam. Okay, and again, if the guy, let me here's a great scam. Here's a great scam. Okay, what's your address, Doug?
3409 Olympia Avenue.
Okay, fine. So I go online and I find a guy who's offering for Pesach. He writes me, I'm going away for Pesach to Israel. I want to rent my house 3409 Olympia, and I'm going to charge $500 a night. If you send me $100, you got it locked in. You'll pay the rest when you get here. And you send him $100. So now this guy, all right, and by the way, you went to your in-laws and your house is empty. So the guy moved in. And he lived in your house during Pesach. Is your house a Kaimel Agra?
Yes.
Well, no, I'm saying now halachically we say it's a Kaimel Agra nowadays.
No, but we said it was a case where I wanted to rent it out while I was waiting. No? Oh no, I didn't want to rent it out. Oh, okay.
So they sent me to your house, and I paid rent. Okay, to rent your house. You're not there. I moved in. So the only reason I would have to pay you is because you would turn your house into a Kaimel Agra. But if you would be a low Kaimel Agra, then I wouldn't have to pay you. Okay, again, that's but if it's a Kaimel Agra, then I don't get then I have to run after the guy I spent the $500 deposit to. I'm gonna have to pay you full rent because you're a Kaimel Agra. And nowadays we say every house is a Kaimel Agra. Okay, and I have to run after the guy to get my rent money back, my deposit back. Okay, Bava Metzia Ayin Test. This is a complicated set of circumstances, and it's indirectly related to Kofin Almida's dome, but it's really a glaring case. So today we're just going to do the basic cases. We may not even finish all the basic cases, but we'll try to keep the scenario straight. It's Ayin Test Amud Aleph Bava Metzia. It is 4 lines from the bottom. Okay, has everybody got it?
Tana Rabbanan?
Tana Rabbanan. Hasocher et hasfina.
Again, where Ein Tet Ahmed?
Ayin Test Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Hasocher es hasfina. So what, again, unstated here is the guy has barrels of wine and he needs to transport the barrels of wine from Ashdod to Haifa by boat. Okay, or let me make even better, from Cyprus to Israel. So he rents a boat to transport wine. The Tovalo b'chatzi haderech, and in the middle of the trip, the boat sinks with the wine. So now, here's a very ambiguous statement. Rabbi Nosson Omer, im nosan lo yito. If the owner of the wine who rented the boat already paid the rent, he doesn't get his money back. The im lo nosan, but if he didn't pay the rent yet, lo yiten, he doesn't have to pay rent. So he rented the boat, and the boat never made it to the destination. And now the owner of the boat wants some kind of compensation, because at the end of the day, you used my boat. It rented in the middle, but at least pay me for half the trip, or maybe even it's your problem. Okay, and the owner of the wine says, "Excuse me, where's the boat that your boat sank and you can't deliver the goods? We made a deal, and you can't deliver the goods, so I don't have to pay you." So what Rabbi Nosson says is that if Reuven paid Shimon, Reuven is the owner of the wine and Shimon's the owner of the boat. If Reuven paid Shimon, Shimon doesn't have to give back the money. But if Reuven didn't pay Shimon and Shimon wants money for the rent of the boat, then Reuven doesn't have to pay it. Says the Gemara, what's going on here? Hey, Chidami, what is the scenario? Okay, let's see Rashi just to get what the din is. Im nosan, what does im nosan mean? You see the Rashi Im Nosan? Again, Reb Nosan made a very ambiguous statement. Im Nosan means he paid. What did he do? Nosan et haschar v'afilu kulo, meaning if Reuven, the owner of the wine, already paid in advance for the rent of the boat, lo yito, kidim forshla kaman, he can't get his money back. The hatoveya yodo ala hatachtona. He's the toveya. Shimon already has the money, and Reuven can't get his money back. We'll see why. Okay, so that's the end of Rashi on the Gemara. Says the Gemara Hechidam. Wait, what's the scenario here? Because there are a lot of scenario elements that should make a difference. What was the deal? Ilema besfina zu. Reuven comes. Reuven, the owner of the wine, comes to Shimon. He sees his marina. He's got five boats. He points out to the boat. Oh, this is the boat I want to transport my wine, and I'm renting this boat. Okay, I'm renting boat A. The Yayin Stam, and the deal was that he's renting boat A to transport wine, 5 barrels of wine. So then the boat sank in the middle. So we don't understand. Ibn Nasan, Reuven paid in advance, right, to rent Shimon's boat A. And the boat sank. So Amai lo yito. Why doesn't Reuven get his money back? Nemale hav li svinta, da'ana maisina chamra. What happened? The boat and the wine all sank, right? Well, you promised me boat A. So bring me boat A and I'll bring you wine, because the wine was stam. I didn't commit to any specific wine. I said I want to transport 5 barrels of wine. So you committed boat A for me to transport wine, and the boat sank. Reuven, am demanding boat A, because that was the deal. The deal was boat A. You can't deliver boat A? Give me back my money. Everybody understand? That's Rashi. Im nosan lo yitol bitmia halo tainas hatoveya bari. Reuven, the owner of the wine, who contracted for boat A, he's got a very strong taina. V'chazaka mi tainas hanitba. The Omar like, wait, what could Shimon respond? Bring me wine. Right, the boat sank, the wine sank. Bring me wine, I'll give you a boat. No. Havli ahisvinta, gufa. Because Reuven can demand boat A, and Shimon cannot deliver boat A. De amarta lisvina zu. You promised me boat A. What are you going to say? Bring wine? I'll bring wine, because I only committed one. Our contract was for me to have wine. Ana maisina kan chamra v'olif l'makom shisna. De ant yain stam amri. The kivan de bala yayin yochel lahashlim tol. This is the key words. This is where everything hinges. Who is able to fulfill the contract? What was the contract? Shimon said boat A. Reuven said wine. And then the boat sank with the wine. Shimon can't deliver boat A. And Reuven can deliver wine, because there wasn't any specific wine. So therefore, Reuven wins, because bala yayin yochel lahashlim tanao, and Shimon can't, because he can't deliver boat A, because it's under the water. Okay, chayav asapan lahamid lo sfina means that Reuven can demand another boat, even though the wine that he was transporting is underground, under the water. He can bring other wine, because the deal was, I will bring wine and you will give me this boat. So if Reuven cannot replace boat, if Shimon cannot replace boat A, okay, Reuven, basically what it means is that if Shimon doesn't provide another boat, Reuven doesn't have to pay anything. You guys following that so far?
No, I'm not following. I don't understand. Like, what's the I have the wine, and you have the boat.
No, I committed a specific boat.
Okay, so I own the wine, and you and I rented a specific boat of yours.
And the boat sank with your wine.
With my wine.
You know what? Maybe it'll be clearer if you still.
I tell you, the problem is really like.
Could you hold, Daniel?
Like,
Daniel,
my wine doesn't go to you. I have to pay you rent, right?
Daniel, could you hold for a minute? Let's see. There are 4 permutations.
It's a bit ambiguous here. Like, what's the wine? There's a loss of a boat, and there's a loss of wine, and there's a loss of schirut here for
Daniel.
Yeah.
Can you hold for a minute? There are
sure. I'm just trying to say that it's complicated.
cases. When you see each claim, you'll understand what's going on. So the first case is that if the deal was a specific boat and wine stam, so if the owner of the boat can't deliver a different boat, Reuven doesn't have to pay anything. And he gets his money back if he paid his money. Okay? Just because Reuven paid the money, why doesn't he get his money back? Name, he has a very strong claim. Havli sfinta, give me a boat to transport my wine. I also can't deliver the original wine, but I didn't commit a specific wine. So that can't be the case. Ella, what's the case? Sfina stam v'yayin zeh. Reuven comes in and says, I want a boat, and I'm going to transport these 5 kegs of wine. These 5 kegs. And I point to the 5 kegs, that's the contract. So the contract is, you give me a boat, and my commitment, and you're committing to transport my 5 kegs. Im lo nosan amai lo yite. At the end of the day, when the boat sank with the wine, so the owner of the boat that sank tells Reuven, you got to pay. Why do you got to pay? Because I'm ready to do my side of the deal. What was my side of the deal? A boat for this wine. You can't deliver this wine. That's your problem. Go drag it out. You want a different wine. That wasn't the contract. The contract was this wine. And therefore, I'm demanding that you fulfill the contract. And if you can't fulfill the contract, you got to pay anyway. Don't ask any questions yet. We're going to see, okay? Nema le havli ahu chamra. You committed the specific wine. So bring that wine and I'll get you a boat. Because I can fulfill my side of the deal. Because my side of the deal was a boat. And your side of the deal was this wine, and you can't deliver this wine. Havli hahu chamra v'ana maisina sfinta. Says Rashi, Nemale havli hahu chamra gufei. We made a deal about specific wine. So as soon as you show up with that wine, I have a commitment to give you a boat. The anamaisina svinta achrita, and ho will the hasapan yesh biyaro lahashlim tnao. The owner of the boats, the renter of the boats, he can fulfill his part of the deal because his deal was a boat. Vizeh ma'akev, but Reuven, the owner of the wine, can't deliver his side of the deal because his side of the deal was to provide this wine for transport. So Yishalim, kol aschar, got to pay. So what kind of a case was it that Rabbi Nosson said that if he paid, he can't get his money back? If he didn't pay, he doesn't have to pay. What's going on? Amar of Papa lo mashkachas lo. The only way we can find a case is bisfina zu v'yayin zeh, that the owner of the boat committed a specific boat, and the owner of the wine committed specific wine, and then whoever has the money keeps the money. Says Rashi, why? Yayin zeh v'sfina zu. Lo biyad zeh v'zeh lahashli. Nobody can really fulfill his part of the deal because the owner of the boat, zeh, he can't deliver that boat, and the owner of the wine can't deliver that wine. Hilkach. Yad toveya ala tachtona. Whoever wants money loses. The Omar le he'ech. The other guy could say, Ana lo makvana mechi ma'isich didach. The owner of the wine says to the owner of the boat, well, you got to deliver the boat. You can't deliver the boat. It's your problem. And the owner of the boat says, well, you got to deliver the wine. And if you don't deliver the wine, it's your problem. And therefore, it's a standoff. And whoever has the money wins. And the other guy, and because nobody has the ability to fulfill their side of the bargain. Okay, but what happens if it was Yayin Stam and Sfina Stam? Aval Besfina Stam v'Yayin Stam Cholkin. Says Rashi. What does that mean? Cholkin means that it's a 50-50 split. Im Kibel Yachzir Achetzi, meaning if the owner of the boat got the full rent, he has to refund half the rent. V'im lo nosan, if the owner of the wine didn't give any rent, he has to give chetzi. Why? Shaharei biat shnehem lahashli. Everybody could do, because the guy who said sfina stam, I'll give you a different boat. The guy who says yain stam, I'll give you a different wine. And therefore, im ya'akev hanitba militen achetzi yaset tna'o. Meaning, what does it mean, cholkin? It means that if nobody wants to bring, the guy who said boat stam doesn't want to give a different boat. And the guy who said Yain Stam doesn't want to bring different wine, so then he's committed for half of the rent. But obviously, if the owner of the boat says, "Look, I said Svina Stam, I'll bring you a boat, and if you can't bring me wine, you got to pay." All right. So again, so now we've got what was the deal? Who can deliver the deal? I'll leave you guys to think between now and Wednesday where Kofin Alminas Dome comes in. There is an aspect of this argument that's going to be classic Kofin Alminas Dome. Okay, we will pick it up then on Wednesday. Please have a Rambam. I'll send you the Rambam and the Shulchan and the Tur Shulchan Aruch to finish up this sugya, because there's buried away here is a Kofin Alminas Dome seat. Okay, the Seder. I'll see everybody Wednesday. Bezrat Hashem.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rav.